Stephen A. Smith does not watch the games. Stephen A. Smith does not watch his favorite team, the New York Knicks, but is willing to come on here and talk to you about them. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a bit of a goof, a bit of a gaffe from the great Stephen A. Smith. So this has been all over the place. I want to talk about it. There's a bigger issue afoot. So we're going to roll this clip. Stephen A. Smith on his show yesterday made a little whoopsie poopsie. We'll dive into that. Before we dive into that, ladies and gentlemen, if you noticed back-to-back videos with the Cafe Du Monde hat, the new hat, got it Sunday. I was walking around the French Quarter, walking around the French Market, had a little, had a couple cocktails. I see this hat and I said, you know what? I'm coming from a place of yes, I'm getting this hat from Cafe Du Monde, the general store or whatever next to it down there by Jackson Square. So digging the hat. I like it. Big fan. So if you've noticed, if you're a longtime follower, you've noticed the hat choices, the Cafe Du Monde hat, back-to-back days. So let's go ahead and watch this. This is yesterday, Stephen A. Smith's show, 16 minutes and 57 seconds in. Let's hear Stephen A. talk about his beloved, his favorite team, the New York Knicks.
I'm looking at Grimes. He's looked good. I'm looking at Isaiah Hartenstein as a reserve, giving you activity off the bench. I'm looking at Mitchell Robinson being here.
Did you catch it? Did you catch it, ladies and gentlemen? Raise your hand if you see the Whoopsie Poopsie. There's two of them. If you are a real NBA fan and watch the game, and especially a New York Knicks fan, then you may know Isaiah Hartenstein does not come off the bench. You may know he's been starting, and you may say to yourself, well, that's not that big of a deal. Like, anybody can make that mistake. It can be just a little loose with the words. And I do agree. That one's not that big of a deal. But Quentin Grimes, the problem with that is Quentin Grimes plays for the Detroit Pistons. Quentin Grimes was traded from the Knicks to the Pistons in February 8th, 2 months ago. So unfortunately, Quentin Grimes was not very impactful for the New York Knicks in defeating the Milwaukee Bucks, since he has not been a New York Knick for the better part of the last 2 months. So, beloved Knicks fan, Stephen A. Smith, beloved NBA fan, NBA expert, NBA analyst, telling us all about the Knicks and Quentin Grimes' impact. This goes to show what I've said over and over and over and over. There is a split in sports media where you've got the talking heads who get paid because they are who they are. And they can get up there, they can watch nothing, they can understand nothing, they can show up, put on a suit, have some producers hand them some notes, and they can just say whatever they want to say, and that's good enough. The other side, though, is now people want analysis. People want to know what's going on. People want to know the analytics, the standings, how many games back this team is, who played well last night, who's playing off the bench, what is the minutes going on, who's playing here, they want to know what's actually happening. The hot take, shallow, just here's a hot take, here's a headline, and we're moving on. That doesn't do it anymore. Another piece to this is this would not have happened 10 years ago. And don't look at me like that, Stephen A. Smith. This is exactly what used to happen all the time. Analysts would get up there, say whatever they wanted, and go completely unchecked. Do you think this would have been monitored at all before social media? No. But there are so many ways now for these people to be checked. Twitter, other YouTube channels, people who actually know ball are hearing this and seeing these clips on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. And they're saying, wait a minute, Quentin Grimes doesn't play for the Knicks. So a throwaway comment that years ago no one would have even noticed is right in front of us. So we can watch it on loop. Now, respect. This was 24 hours ago. They left the video up because they don't care, right? They don't care about being right or being correct or being accurate. It's just throw the video up, get the views, get the likes, get the engagement, get the ad revenue, and we'll move on to the next one. Now, why is this a big deal? Why is this a problem? Why am I even talking about this? We know, and we've belabored the point over videos in the past. We know that there's a divide in sports media. We know that now with individual content creators, the highly paid top dogs at these media networks, we know now that they have to up their game and they have to be better because they're being held accountable by people who actually watch sports, by people who actually watch the games. I can guarantee you, I am based in New Orleans, Louisiana. I watch the Pelicans. All right, I go to the Pelicans games. I have to deal with that misery. So I don't watch the Knicks on a daily basis. But I guarantee you, there are a bevy of Knicks content creators who have YouTube channels who watch every second of every Knicks game. So if you are a New York Knicks fan and you want to know what's happening with your team, are you going to watch this where a Knicks fan doesn't even know that Quentin Grimes was traded 2 months ago? Or are you going to put it on some YouTube channel of a guy who a diehard fan of the Knicks who actually knows who's on the roster? I would hope you go watch the Knicks YouTube videos, the actual content creators. So we already know that's happening. We already know that there's a big power shift. We already know that ESPN, Fox Sports, these major conglomerates, we already know that they're for a specific audience. And true sports fans who want to know what's going on and want the analysis are going elsewhere. But here's where it's the real fly in the ointment, as they say. Stephen A. Smith has an MVP vote. A lot of analysts have votes for the Heisman, Rookie of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, MVP, Coach of the Year, in all the leagues. Now, why is that a big deal? I'll tell you why it's a big deal. Because sports betting is huge. And you know what you can bet on? You can bet on MVP. You can bet on Sixth Man of the Year. These are multi-million-dollar markets that I'm talking about. And you have voters who are determined, have financial influence. Voters who don't even know who's on the roster. Quentin Grimes might be getting a Sixth Man of the Year award vote from Stephen A. Smith for Quentin Grimes' work in the Knicks' defeat of the Milwaukee Bucks last night. He was great, according to Stephen A. Smith. Maybe his performance last night for the Knicks, maybe that swung Stephen A. Smith. And maybe that'll make Stephen A. Smith vote for Quentin Grimes. You know, get an award for the New York Knicks. But we all know that's not possible. And hopefully, when Stephen A. goes to vote for Quentin Grimes, he doesn't sort by team, or he's going to be confused that he's not listed for the New York Knicks. This happens all the time. And we see it time and time again, where a West Coast team or a West Coast player loses an award to an East Coast team or an East Coast player strictly because it's easier to watch. Strictly because it's hard to stay up late for a West Coast team or a West Coast player. We are a couple years removed from Mike Greenberg saying in the NBA Finals that the country is getting introduced to Nikola Jokic because he plays out west. Happens every year in college football. It is so hard for West Coast players to win awards unless they are generational, because most of the voters on the East Coast don't watch them. Bottom line. Happens in college basketball, happens in every sport. And as sports betting gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and remember, we're not even there yet. We're not even to the point where sports betting is legal in every state. So once it's legal in every state, and you're sitting there and you've got a ticket on whatever player to win Defensive Player of the Year, and you're watching every game, you're breaking down the analysis, you're breaking down the play, and you're like, man, I think this guy should be up for Sixth Man of the Year. Just remember that a majority of the voters can't stay up late to watch the games, or just don't even watch the games. But they still have a vote, but they still get out there and talk about the game and talk about and sway other people with their analysis that's completely wrong and completely non-factual. So what needs to happen is there needs to be a check of who the hell has votes. And we need to, instead of just handing them out to every media personality, Let's actually give the votes to voters who watch the games. How about that? And here's the next level of why it pisses me off. ESPN now is a sports book. ESPN Bet, right? How many times have we seen a picture of Stephen A. Smith or Mike Greenberg or whoever on an ESPN, Scott Van Pelt or whoever they're using on Instagram or on Twitter, a big promo. Bet with this person, single game parlay plus 280. Here you go, these 3 games. Deposit now. Deposit here. So it's not like they're totally removed from these markets. You got, and I'm not saying anything corrupt's happening. I'm saying it's just not up to snuff. I'm saying it's not good enough. The voters should be better. If the sports book, ESPN, is taking your money for these awards, I want to see the voters for the awards actually be credentialed. I don't want to see this. D'Amico Ryans this year, I had a big ticket on D'Amico Ryans to win Coach of the Year. D'Amico Ryans lost by 1 vote. If he would have been on any points, so it's a point system. You get first place, second place, third place, whatever. It gives points. A voter left him off. A voter left D'Amico Ryans off the ballot. Now, I don't know who that was. This is anonymous votes, whatever. Would I be surprised if that voter just forgot? Would I be surprised if that voter was in New York and just didn't watch Texans games and didn't even think about D'Amico Ryans? Would I be surprised if that voter is a media personality who doesn't really watch football but has a vote? Would I be surprised? No, I wouldn't be surprised at all. How many times over the last couple of years have we heard an ESPN analysis or an analyst or a commentator or a play-by-play guy I'm pretty sure Mark Jackson just had to apologize because we'll see a ballot and all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, you left blank player completely off your ballot. And then they come back and say, oops, forgot, my fault. Totally forgot about blank player. Oops, LOL. Well, it matters now. It matters now that sports betting and all of this is here. We can't have these kind of whoopsie poopsies. Voters, analysts, commentators, whatever, have to be held accountable. 100%. If Stephen A. Smith didn't have a vote, if Stephen A. Smith was just a talking head on ESPN, whatever, doesn't matter. Who cares? He's just a talking head on ESPN, even though he is the highest paid talking head on the biggest network, even though you would like for him to know who's on the roster of his self-proclaimed favorite team. You would hope that was the case, but mistakes happen. We all get lazy at our jobs. It is what it is. But now that these markets are here, now that sports betting is here, ladies and gentlemen, this ain't good enough. It ain't good enough. And I'll tell you this. In a few years, just remember, we've been on the front of this. In a few years, it's going to swing. 100%. With fantasy sports, sports betting, sports are taken much more seriously. Much more seriously. And I'll give you another prediction. College basketball, women's college basketball, huge boom, right? Huge boom. Very popular. 20 million people watched Iowa, South Carolina. 20 million people watched Iowa, LSU. You're going to start seeing and hearing all these women college basketball experts and WNBA experts who are trying to sell you betting advice because betting on these sports is going to become super popular. Fantasy WNBA is going to be super popular because the players are so popular. And all of a sudden, ESPN and Fox Sports and whoever else, they're going to roll out all these experts. And they're going to tell you, yeah, I like the Indiana Fever plus 2.5, whatever. And they've never made a bet in their life. So now that all this is here, and it's all in front of you, and it's all accessible, and it's all over your phone, and you have 15 apps where you can deposit and download money, put money into, and make bets, make sure you're watching someone who actually watches the game. Make sure you're watching content of an actual sports fan. There's enough competitors. Don't just go turn on ESPN and say, oh, wow, well, Rex Ryan said that the Jets are sweet, so I'm taking the Jets -7. Oh, wow. ESPN has a whatever anchor or who, ESPN has a Stephen A. Smith single game parlay. He's a Knicks fan. He's got Knicks money line, Knicks Lakers under, and Quentin Grimes for the Knicks to score more than 24 points. Yeah, I'll take this for plus 180. Don't fall for it, ladies and gentlemen. There are better options out there. Thank you very much for watching. Go in the comments below. Let me know where you come down on this, where you're at, where your content, where you watch the majority of your content. Do you bet any of these single game parlays? And I see the Trey Wingo parlays on DraftKings all the time and all this. Do you find your betting advice, fantasy advice from this? Do you sports bet at all? What do you think? Big conversation here. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.